Hello everyone, welcome back to another recall session. So today we're going to discuss with you about the physiology recall questions of NEET PG 2018. Okay, so let us start discussing the questions. The first question is the predominant organ producing insulin like growth factor 1 is growth hormone acts on liver and that will produce somatomedins, and that somatomedin C, which is the type of somatomedin that is commonly referred to as insulin-like growth factor 1. Okay, so liver is the predominant organ which is producing insulin-like growth factor 1. So the answer here is A, liver. The next question is what is prosopagnosia? Prosopagnosia is actually a factual question. Is the difficulty in identifying known faces. Okay, so the answer here is C. The next question is all of the following are components responsible for the counter current mechanism in the kidney except. So the functioning of loop of Henle for the counter current mechanism includes the first thing is high permeability of thick descending limb to water via aquaporin one channel. Second thing is active transport of sodium and chloride via thick ascending limb. And the last one is inflow of tubular fluid through proximal tubule and outflow to distal tubule. Okay, so let us look at the options. The first option is sodium outflow in thick ascending limb. So this is true statement. This component is responsible for the counter current mechanism. The next option is water outflow in thin descending limb. Yes, it is also responsible for counter current mechanism. The third option is sodium outflow in thin ascending limb. Actually, thin ascending limb do not exist. Okay, so sodium outflow in thin ascending limb is not responsible for counter current mechanism in the kidney. So this is wrong. And flow of tubular fluid from proximal convoluted tubule to distal convoluted tubule. This one is right statement. So the answer here is sodium outflow in thin ascending limb. Okay, because this is not a part of counter current mechanism. The next question is glucose is absorbed in intestine by. Glucose actually absorbed in intestine by secondary active transport. So primary active transport, no. Facilitated diffusion, no. Simple diffusion, no. Secondary active transport, yes. So the answer here is option number D. The next question is, in which of the following conditions is oxygen therapy not useful? Asthma, yes, it is useful in asthma. Acute myocardial infarction, yes, it is useful in acute myocardial infarction. Pulmonary edema, yes. Central respiratory depression, no, it is not useful because brain respiratory center is not working. So central respiratory depression, no matter how much you give oxygen to the patient, that will not work because the brain respiratory center to inspiration and expiration is not actually working. So the answer here is option number D. Ventilation perfusion ratio is equal to infinity means the ventilation perfusion ratio becomes infinity. That literally means no perfusion, means no exchange of O2 and CO2. Okay, so the answer here is option number B, no exchange of O2 and CO2. The next question is, C wave in jugular venous pressure is seen in. C wave represents the bulging of tricuspid valve into the right atrium during the isovolumetric contraction of right ventricle. So the answer here is option number A, isovolumetric contraction. Okay. All of the following are true regarding the actions of endothelin 1 except. So let us look at the options. Bronchodilation? No. Endothelin acts on endothelin 1 receptor and causes bronchoconstriction. Vasoconstriction? Yes, it is responsible for vasoconstriction. Decreased GFR? Yes, it is responsible for decreased GFR. And the last one is, has inotropic effect? Yes, it has inotropic effect. The next question is, aldosterone secretion is maximally stimulated by. Let us talk about the potent stimulator of aldosterone. There are two potent stimulators of aldosterone. The first one is hyperkalemia and the second one is activation of renin angiotensin aldosterone system. Okay, so let us look at the options. Hyperkalemia, yes, it is the maximal stimulator of aldosterone. ACTH, no. Hypernatremia, no. Exogenous steroid, no. So the answer is A. The next question is, cyclic GMP is the second messenger of. So let us look at the options. Somatostatin? No. Angiotensin 2? No, it is not the second messenger of angiotensin 2 also, as well as ADH also, because these are not activated by cyclic GMP. Nitric oxide, yes, cyclic GMP activates the nitric oxide vasodilator reaction. Okay, so the answer here is D, nitric oxide. The next question is transport molecule of Fe plus 2 into the enterocytes is Fe plus 2 enters into enterocyte via one channel. That channel is known as divalent metal transporter 1. Okay, so the answer here is C. The next question is nuclear signaling pathways are all except caveolins. Yes, it is a nuclear signaling pathway. Nuclear factor kappa beta. Yes, it is nuclear signaling pathway. Importance. Yes, it is nuclear signaling pathway. Red proteins. No, it is not a nuclear signaling pathway. It is a bioactive protein intended to use for cell culture applications. Okay, so the answer here is D, red proteins. The next question is which of the following statements is false about Cuthbertson's metabolic ebb and flow responses to trauma? So let us talk about what is the Cuthbertson's metabolic ebb and flow response. So what is ebb response? Ebb response in trauma is responsible for decline in body temperature, oxygen consumption, and aimed at reducing post-traumatic energy depletion. And the next phase is actually flow phase. It occurs after resuscitation of shock leads to increased metabolic turnover, activation of innate immune system, and induction of hepatic metabolic turnover. Okay, so this one is ebb phase and this one is flow phase. So let us look at the options. The ebb phase is associated with a decline in body temperature and oxygen consumption. So this one is true. The flow phase occurs after resuscitation from a state of shock. This one is also true. The A phase is aimed at reducing post-traumatic energy depletion. This one is also true. The A phase leads to activation of the innate immune system and induction of the hepatic acute phase response. No, is actually the flow phase leads to activation of innate immune system and induction of hepatic acute phase response, not the F phase. Okay, so the answer here is D because it is the false statement. The next question is kidney responses to shock by kidney causes afferent arterial resistance in response to shock. So the answer here is option number B, increasing afferent arterial resistance. Okay. So with this, we complete our recall session. So thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.